Welcome friends, JT here. So glad you're joining me today. I'm here to share a few of my thoughts about the new Apple iPhone 13 Pro. As you probably already know, there are four varieties of the new iPhone 13. The standard 13, the 13 mini, the 13 Pro, and the 13 Pro Max. I'll be reviewing the Pro Max. I switched to that several years ago and I love the format. Large hands, a big appetite for big yummy displays, and this is the one for me. Let's get started. Ooh la la. I went with the charcoal color, and I've got to say, I really like it. It feels heavy, heavier than the iPhone 12 Pro Max that I had previously. The phone, no brick is included as part of Apple's carbon footprint reduction strategy. Now, in terms of the phone, one nice feature that I like is a larger battery. I don't know about you, but with my iPhone 12 Pro Max, the only way I could get through a day was by using the MagSafe battery. And having to carry this around was not enjoyable. Particularly, I had this in my pocket one day, and I put my security badge at work in the same pocket, and lo and behold, my security badge stopped working. One of the hazards of the MagSafe is getting it near credit card security badges and such that have a magnetic strip. The fact that they now have a larger battery, I think, is a big plus with this phone. And I'll trade a little extra weight for extended battery life any day of the week. Nice. It looks gorgeous. I love the design, the weight, the feel, the larger cameras. It looks like a brilliant design. I'm very pleased with the color choice. It's got a bit of a muted matte color with a mirror finish underneath, and I think it looks exceptional. Let's power it on. Now this features the new Super Retina XDR display with ProMotion that features an adaptive refresh rate. This means that it lowers the refresh rate when it's not needed to conserve battery life and increases it all the way up to 120 Hz or 120 times per second when it is needed to provide the smoothest scrolling experience Apple has ever offered in an iPhone. And it comes with 28% brighter screen, up to 1,000 nits of peak brightness, which is brilliant, pun intended. And I was really pleased with the display on the 12 Pro, and the fact that we're getting 28% more brightness is exceptional. I would say I'm really pleased with the display. I don't know, there's a quality about it I can't quite describe until you get it in your hands, but it looks phenomenal. I would say it's noticeably better than any iPhone display I've seen yet. You'll also notice that the notch has been noticeably reduced in this version. The iPhone 13 features the new A15 Bionic chip, which gives you 6 cores, 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. The ability for the system to dynamically change between these two sets of cores is fantastic. You can run on the 4 efficiency cores when you're doing low-level processing, menial tasks that just don't require a lot of CPU functionality to really save on battery life. But then when you need those CPU cycles, it can instantly switch over to those 2 performance cores and get the job done. It's a brilliant design. I think this is going to be around for many years where we have this balance between efficiency and performance cores. This phone offers a 77mm 12-megapixel telephoto lens with 3 times optical zoom compared to 2.5 times optical zoom in the iPhone 12 Pro. It also features a 13mm 12-megapixel ultra-wide lens with an f1.8 aperture. When compared to the 2.4 aperture in the iPhone 12 Pro, it lets in about twice as much light as its predecessor, and that's significant. It features a 26mm 12 megapixel wide lens with an f1.5 aperture. That's an improvement over the 12 Pro's 1.6 aperture. It also features Smart HDR4, which will recognize 4 people and automatically adjust the lighting, contrast, and skin tones for those individuals, and that results in much better dynamic range. And one of the most exciting features of this new phone is macro photography and videography. This gives us the ability to do those close-up macro shots in photography and for our videos. I was in the market to buy a new macro lens for my mirrorless camera, and once I heard that this new phone is supporting macro photography and videography, I decided to hold off on that purchase, give this a try, and see how well it performs. So I'm excited to try it out here in just a moment. This phone also now allows you to shoot your video in ProRes. And why that's so important is that ProRes has become a bit of a de facto standard in video editing. It's so flexible, it doesn't put a large heavy load on your processor to edit. And so that means it's a great format for doing your video editing. So you can now shoot in ProRes, take that over into your post-production, edit it in Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, or whatever you're editing on using the same format. So this means much smoother, simpler workflow. Shoot in one format, edit in that same format without having to go through the painful process of transcoding your footage. What I am super stoked about on this phone is that it now supports cinematic mode. And what that means is that as you're shooting video, the phone can automatically blur the images that are in the background while keeping the objects that are in the foreground in focus. And it can do rack focusing so that if the focus of the video shifts from one person or object to another, the phone will automatically detect that shift and will rack focus from one object or one person over to another. That's incredible. That is a game changer. This is what Hollywood has been doing for years as part of its storytelling process. It helps you know what to focus on by using the rack focus to shift from one person to another to shift your focus in the storytelling process. And we've had that capability in cinematic cameras, and it's shifted over into the mirrorless camera world now for several years. But the fact that that now fits in your pocket is phenomenal. And I believe it really will be a game changer for those involved in videography and cinematography. Now, I've been predicting that this cinematic mode was going to be added to smartphones for many years now. And as soon as Apple announced that it was including a LiDAR sensor into the iPhone 12 Pro, I knew it was just around the corner. As a matter of fact, I was really hopeful that last year Apple was going to release that feature into its software, but unfortunately it didn't happen. I don't know why. I would speculate that the A14 Bionic chip just didn't have enough CPU and GPU performance to be able to handle that kind of processing workload. But it's obvious that Apple waited until they were ready to be able to fully release the functionality of that cinematic mode with the new A15 Bionic chip. Now, I want to date myself a little bit, but back in 1993, Apple released the Newton Personal Digital Assistant, the PDA. And at the time, I was producing television shows for the computer industry, and so Apple sent me an evaluation copy. I unboxed it, evaluated, and within an hour, it was really obvious that what the software was wanting to deliver, the hardware simply could not keep up. It was a matter of brilliant interface and design, but it was just a technology that was ahead of its time. The hardware simply couldn't deliver on the promises made by the software. And in the past 30 years or so since that event, I'm so pleased that Apple's learned the lesson to know the right point at which to marry the software and the hardware to bring the right user experience. And I remember that Newton, it was the first PDA that offered digital handwriting, and it was so painfully slow to use. It was just unbearable. And I suspect something like that is the reason why they did not release that cinematic mode with the iPhone 12 Pro. That A14 chip just must not have been able to keep up, or the algorithm just hadn't been refined to the point. I'm sure they're using AI or machine learning to handle that kind of functionality, and that's just a process where you have to create modeling data before it's really ready. I suspect it may have been a combination of really building up the machine learning, the AI, and getting the performance of that bionic chip to where it needed to be. As I began experiencing this new iPhone 13, I'm finding this beautiful symmetry between the hardware, the software, the interface, the aesthetics. It feels like they've really reached a level of maturity that I haven't seen in any of the previous models. Every part of the phone that I'm experiencing here has been refined a notch or two. Where I think this phone is really going to be appealing is for those who are interested in photography. That's if you want to take family photos and send them out, share them on social media, or you have an Instagram account, or you're pretty serious about photography. I feel like this is going to fill a huge gap between what is in your pocket and a mirrorless digital camera. For those interested in videography and cinematography, this device opens up a whole new world. Your ability to express yourself creatively and artistically has just gone up. You now have tools to do yourself as a one-person team what previously took multiple individuals to do, and a lot more expensive equipment. I'm shooting this on a Sony a7S III with a decent lens, a $6,000 just the basic camera and lens itself is around $6,000, and as I'm shooting it here is tens of thousands of dollars. And now this smartphone in your pocket can give you very similar capabilities. It's only a matter of time until the delta point between mirrorless cameras, cinematic type cameras, and iPhones is completely blurred, to the point that it will be indistinguishable whether footage was shot on a phone or a mirrorless or cinema type camera. That's exciting. I think one of the biggest challenges that get in the way of the iPhone being used in a cinematic world is the difficulty in getting the footage off of the device. If I shoot let's say a 15-minute clip in 4K on my Sony a7S III that's say 40 gigabytes in size, I can offload that card in just a few minutes because I have very fast media chips. But the iPhone has typically been much slower. It takes quite a bit of time to be able to get that footage off, particularly in an uncompressed format. And so if you're shooting this high quality HDR4 using this bokeh background, this blurred beautiful background, and you're shooting it in 4K, and then you want to take that over to a MacBook Pro or some device or even an iPad Pro to do your editing, the amount of time it's going to take to get the media off of this device to do the editing is going to be a fairly substantial hurdle. I think that's the biggest opportunity that Apple has right now, is figuring out how to close that gap so that as you shoot large files, you'll be able to quickly get that off your device and into a post-production editing scenario. As soon as Apple solves that, I think that's going to be one of the last hurdles that keeps people from using the iPhone as a primary cinematography tool. But I'm super excited. I'm going to begin using this right now. As a matter of fact, as soon as I get done recording this section, I'm going to start putting this into practice. I want to actually look at what does the macro videography look like? What does this rack focusing? How does it perform? So as soon as I get past this, I'm going to begin laying down some sample videos to just give you an idea of what it's capable of doing. Now, my reaction to this phone is that it is a brilliant step forward. Clearly, there are levels of refinement and improvement in this device over every previous iPhone. As I hold it in my hand, it feels robust, crisp. The aesthetics are incredible. If I consider who should buy this phone, first of all, if you're into photography, absolutely, you need this phone. If you can afford it, get this phone. If you're into videography, cinematography, if you're a YouTuber, if you're on Instagram, this is a powerful tool that will really serve your needs well. I'm super excited about this because a lot of my camera equipment is so bulky that it inhibits my ability to freely take it and shoot in a variety of flexible settings. But this all of a sudden gives me a lot of capability. When I pair this with a gimbal, I think it's going to give me a whole new level of tools in my tool belt to express artistic creativity. Also, early adopters, of course. If you've got to have the latest tech, this is the thing to get. Also, if you are someone who hasn't upgraded your phone in years and you're thinking, is this the time to do it? I think so. I upgrade my phone every year, but I see enough improvements over this entire experience that I'm really excited to be putting this to use. Now, in terms of the long-term perspective, as someone who's been a technology professional for 40 years, I like to look at the bigger picture and think of the impact a device like this will likely have on the market. In many ways, this is simply an evolutionary change. We're seeing improvements across the board on this device. But where we're seeing, I think, a blip in the radar of the advancement of technology over time, what this is introducing with cinematography particularly, I think is going to change the way people work with video that capture. People with an artistic flavor are going to find this to be an incredible tool. I'm excited to see what's going to come of this. I think we're going to see new YouTube offerings where stuff's being shot on the iPhone that are going to be fairly difficult to distinguish between this and professional cinematography gear. Anyway, I'm so excited to start shooting some footage off this. I'm going to end this segment here and then shoot some footage and present those to you so you get an idea about what we're talking about in terms of the capabilities of this as a videography tool and a photography tool. Well, I don't know about you, but I gotta have it. As a matter of fact, I got it. I bought this myself. It's not sponsored. I paid for all this myself, so there's no bias involved. I am excited to put this to use. I'm looking forward to your experiences. If you have questions, put those in the comments below because I would love to answer those. If you have feedback, if you've experienced things, found different conclusions, I would love to have those as well. Let's open up the dialogue about how do you see the impact of this device in your life and in your ability to create in new ways. Hey, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, consider doing that. Like the video if you would so that others have a higher chance of watching it. Until next time, spread the love.
Appalachian sunrise meets my skin. Even with my eyes still closed, I can feel it coming in. Golden, golden, I'll follow only golden, 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 golden things. Mountain laurel high fives for miles in spring. Rainbow trout and a hummingbird wing. Golden, I'll follow only golden, golden, golden things. Gold hair, gold rings, gold leaves, gold anything, golden, I'll follow only golden, golden, golden things. Ooh. my sun. Feet step over splinters of the moon.